This webinar is just to kind of talk about a few different topics. So just preparation. I know you guys are all getting excited, starting to get your visa. So we just wanted to touch on a few topics. So we'll go over housing, budget, travels, and safety. And we have some great people here to help us talk about the different topics. So myself, obviously, you guys know me. I'm your US-based coordinator. And I'm Katie. And then we also have Camila. If you want to introduce yourself, Camila.
Hi, everybody. I'm Camila Soto, the in-country coordinator at Santiago de Chile.
Awesome. And Matt, do you want to introduce yourself quickly? Matt? Uh-oh. Matt, I think you might be muted.
Yeah, I think Matt is muted and Tiffany's back.
Tiffany, are you here? Sorry, everyone. A lot of different people just means a little more complications. Tiffany, can you hear us? All right, well, we'll move on to the next slide, start talking, and then once Matt and Tiffany can talk to us, they will introduce themselves and do so.
Hey, sorry, I'm back, by the way.
Hey, Matt, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yeah, my name is Matt. I'm 23 and I work at the Plaza Vespucio campus in La Florida. Really enjoyed my time in Chile and I'm planning on staying another year.
Awesome. And Tiffany, are you there yet or should we move on? All right, we'll move on to the next and then we'll introduce Tiffany when she when we can hear her. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is housing. I know a lot of you guys have asked questions about getting housing and what that kind of process will look like. We'll go into it a lot more in orientation, but Camila, do you want to kind of quickly go over the housing and just kind of where to look and all of those details?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Katie. I just want to remind everyone that before looking for housing, we have to wait for what DUOC decides on what campus are you going to be located, because that will definitely make your decision on housing, okay? But just so that you can start checking out some pricing, some places, some neighborhoods, we are sharing some sites like compartodepto.cl and the Roommate and Fat Finder page in Facebook. That those two have been the most that participants have used the last 2 years. We're going to share more options during orientation. And I also wanted to share the Discover Chile page at Facebook. It's a page where they share not just housing, but many things related to expats or foreigners living in Chile, recommendations. It's a place also, I think, to meet people, so that you can check that out. Right now for Santiago, because of the current situation, we are recommending to live up in Uptown Providencia, Ñuñoa, La Reina, Las Condes, okay? For the people that may be located in Valparaíso and Viña del Mar, you're gonna see that you will have lower prices than what you find in Santiago. And the sort of neighborhoods we recommend in Valparaíso, for example, are Cerro Alegre and Cerro Concepción, and in Viña del Mar, you have Chorrillos, Miraflores, the Orientes, Ponientes, and Nortes that are the streets, okay, that have different numbers. As I tell you, it's better. This is just so that you can get a first idea, but of course you will have to be here to check the apartments, to check the places, to know like the transportation system that is helpful for you to get to work. And we're going to see all of that during orientation. For specific questions and specific cases, I'm going to be very available during orientation, okay?
Awesome.
And Katie, I don't know if you want me to add anything?
Yeah, no, I think that was good. I think, you know, the website and the kind of bullet points are just to get you guys kind of a jumping off point. I know you're curious and want to start to look into it now. So we just wanted to give you some information so you can kind of get a feel of what it might look like. But definitely wait, like Camila said, you'll want to see the apartment before you do anything. But feel free to look. Of course, it's always great to be able to do that. So Matt,
and I forgot, Katie, can you
yeah,
turn to the next slide?
yeah, of course.
I put a map of Santiago's districts.
Sure.
So that you can have an idea where Providencia, Las Condes, La Reina, Ñuñoa are, that are the districts in orange and in yellow, okay?
Yep, so that's where you'd recommend them living? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Perfect. So Matt, do you want to talk a little bit about your kind of experience finding an apartment and what it's like?
Yeah, so I kind of agree. All of those resources are pretty useful when finding it. There's a couple other like Facebook groups that you can join, but like, yeah, I mostly use Comparto Depto and Roommate and Flat Finder. Obviously, it's it's nice having somewhere to live in the hostel for that 1 month. And yeah, you definitely want to go and check all the places out before making your decision. That's what I did. I saw a handful of places before really deciding, and all those neighborhoods are pretty good. I currently live in Bella Vista, which is pretty close to Plaza Italia. So obviously, as the situation has kind of changed the environment a bit. So yeah, but all those neighborhoods are I would definitely recommend.
Perfect. And would you tell them like anything, any piece of advice in terms of what it's like when you start looking? You know, I know it's stressful, obviously, but any kind of piece of advice in terms of housing?
Yeah, definitely if the place is nice, great, but definitely make sure you could see yourself living with these people. I know some people on our program have changed houses because they realized they didn't really like living with a roommate or something. So yeah, just kind of make sure that you could see yourself living with that person long term, because you don't want to have to move midway through, and you don't want to choose something just because you like the place that's like there.
Yeah, good point. And are most people in a lease? Like if you don't like the situation you're in, how easy is it to move out?
I guess it depends case by case. If you sign a contract somewhere with
Right.
someone, then you're there for the extended amount of time. I signed a contract until January.
Got it.
I know other people have it more kind of loose, where
Yeah.
it's just kind of a verbal agreement, and
Yeah.
they kind of handle it as they do.
Cool. So it just depends.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd say it just depends on.
Awesome. And Tiffany, I see that you're there, but I know you've had some issues. Can you hear us or not yet? Okay. All right. We'll move on. Perfect. So budget. I know, when you're planning to go, you want to know how much things cost, how much should you save, all of that. So just talking to participants and kind of what I've gathered, most people pay between 230 and 270 Chilean pesos. So it's about $290 to $350 a month. The monthly groceries, people try and aim for under 100,000. Monthly transportation, it varies depending on how much you're going back and forth to school, all of those kind of specifics, but you can estimate around 30 to 50,000. The phone plan can be about 15,000. So necessities, so kind of rent, groceries, transportation, phone plan adds up to around 400,000. So then you have about 170,000 kind of left over for going out to eat or going out with friends, all of those kind of fun things, travels on the side. So Matt, I think it's fair to say if you want to do extensive traveling, it's really important, to bring some money with you or to tutor on the side to make up kind of that difference. Matt, what's your experience been like with your budget, how much you're, making and what you're living on, and just advice?
Yeah, I definitely agree that if you want to do some more extensive traveling, then it's good to have money saved up that you can access that you previously brought down with you. But I'd say the monthly stipend is definitely enough to make, to live an enjoyable lifestyle, you know. Like you said, there's enough money to go out to eat or go out with friends, whatever that may be.
Mm-hmm.
Groceries obviously depends on where you buy your food. You know, there's some, for example, I know some people who shop at like the Jumbo in Costanera, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the most expensive grocery store, I think, in the country. So it just kind of depends on where you grocery shop. Obviously, there's a lot of markets like La Vega, which is the big one, which I'm not sure. Did we go to it at all on our orientation?
I don't
No,
think I went.
I'm sorry, Kitty. We didn't went to orientation, but we did go to the mid-year gathering to La Vega, Matt. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I always recommend La Vega, or every neighborhood has their own farmers market that has a lot of fresh produce, and it's more affordable than going to the supermarket. Other thing I wanted to add, um, regarding budget, is that it's good that you have this idea of that in Chile it's not that cheap to move around, you know, in public transportation and to buy things. Also, what would you say, Matt, regarding going out or buying lunch? Like, what has been your experience?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of options at every campus. You know, some people have vendors that sell things outside that you can get for maybe like 1 to 3,000 pesos, like whether it's like sandwiches or empanadas or salads. Um, so that's kind of lunch, or obviously like a sit down something like you have the plato de dia, where you can spend anywhere from like I want to say like 4 to 6 thousand pesos, and that's like gets
Yeah.
you like a full meal of an entree, like a juice and like a side as well. So that's always pretty good. And then transportation, I guess, kind of depends on where you live and what campus you're at. I know some people have to take both a bus and the metro, and some people use the metro more than others. But yeah, I'd say the metro definitely costs a bit of your monthly salary.
Cool. Awesome. Camila, anything else just about budget or anything like that?
No, I think I'm pretty okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Any questions from participants?
And
You
I
guys
don't
have
know
any?
if Tiffany can comment if she's
She can't
able
really
to
hear
comment.
and she can't talk. So as of now, unfortunately, I don't think she'll be able to. Any questions from participants about budget or housing before we move on?
Of course, we're also going to see this in depth during orientation.
Yeah,
and I'm
right.
also going to invite participants from this year, 2019, to participate in our orientation so that they can share, you know, answer questions, etc.
Awesome. Cool. You're right. Just to make sure everything's working, either Nancy or Lacey, Grant, Ryan, can one of you just let me know that you can hear me still? I just want to make sure there's no technical issues for you guys. Okay, perfect. Thank you guys. So no questions as of now, so we'll get going. So traveling, I think one of the reasons that a lot of people teach abroad is just the opportunity to see more, to experience more. And obviously, you know, most of the participants that are there now, the teachers have gotten to do a lot of that. So Matt, why don't you kind of talk about, you know, when you've been able to travel, kind of how you've traveled, and just some highlights.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of options to travel close by as well as, you know, going to other countries. I'd say just kind of depends on what day off you have. I'd say most people have a day off during the week. But so, for example, like this semester, I have Friday off as well. So I have a 3-day weekend. So it allows me to travel a bit more. You know, you can go to the south. I'm just looking at some pictures. There's obviously the vineyards in between Viña del Mar and Santiago. And then a weekend trip to Viña del Mar or Valparaiso is always nice. As for more extensive traveling, you get 3 weeks off for winter vacation in July. So most people did kind of a bigger trip, whether that was to the Atacama in the north, or I think some people went to Patagonia in the south or Peru. I went to Colombia for those 3 weeks. That was definitely a fun time. And yeah, so I'd say there's definitely a lot of opportunities for traveling close by as well as far, which also don't really break the bank, which is good.
Cool. And the weekend trips, like, do you think you could do a weekend trip a month without having to like work extra, or how did different people kind of fund their smaller travels?
Well, doing private classes on the side is always kind of a nice way to make some extra money. And I feel like I mentioned before, it's good to have some money saved up for when you come down here for when you want to travel.
Right.
But also a lot of campuses are different. Some coordinators are very encouraging of the tips going to travel. So some are much more lenient about you taking time off, while others are not so much. They don't want you to take time off to travel.
Yeah, so it just depends. Okay, cool.
Katie, one thing I wanted to comment that I forgot to do on budget that Matt added here is that remember that your internship at Duoc will be like a part-time internship. So you will have time if you need and you want to. And we also recommend it to find sort of private tutoring, for example, or even online lessons that give you an extra income to help you for your travel, for example. I would say that in general it is sort of accessible to move around at the outside of Santiago or around central Chile, even go to the south. But if you want to travel, if you plan to come to South America and like Matt, go to Colombia, Brazil, Argentina, Peru, etc., you will have to either have some saved money or another income that helps you do that trip.
Yep. Okay. Sounds good. And is it easy to find, tutoring jobs on the side?
What would you say, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a lot of resources, whether that's with a private company, such as the Language Co. There's also a number of other private companies that are very reputable. And also you can find them on your own. For example, I had another teacher at Duoc who taught a different subject, but wanted to learn some English. So I met with him twice a week. And that was, you can make anywhere from on your own, you dictate how much you can charge. So I'd say anywhere from like people charge around from 15,000 to 20,000 for an hour or so. So you do that a couple times a week, and it makes a good extra bit on the side to support your base salary that you get from Duoc.
So 15,000 to 20,000 is pretty common.
Yeah, I think what Matt is saying is what I've seen also in the last 3 years with participants.
Yeah.
There
so it's about 20 US dollars, just so you know. About 20 US dollars is 15,000. So people just can get an idea.
Also, if you're trying to find private tutoring, it will help you a lot, like connecting with your Duoc colleagues, like in Chile, everything's about connections, how you get to other people and to possible jobs. But also there are many websites where US teachers give lessons to Chinese students, for example,
like
participants have done in the past.
Yep. Yeah. Awesome. Any questions about traveling or budget, anything like that? Okay. Sounds good. Looks like, okay. So now we're going to kind of talk about the protests and just kind of the safety, what's going on in Chile. So Camila, do you want to kind of start with that?
Yes, as many of you know, we are having a current sort of social protests that have started from October. Just to give a little bit of the history of protests in Chile, they have started since dictatorship and even before, because Chile is a country with a strong political history. Many of you probably know that we had a dictatorship from 1973 to 1990. And we had really big protests in the 80s that were looking for the end of dictatorship, okay? In the I would say from the 90s until today, and in the last, especially in the last, say, 10 years or a little more, there have always been protests dealing with specific issues such as education issues, social issues, abortion and violence against women, and also the LGBT cause. Okay, so to give you an idea of general causes that have been in our political life in Chile. Specific protests we are living today started, or um, they, like the history of how they start are in October 6th, where the Metro Fair had a raise in 30 pesos, Chilean pesos, and it began with student protests, okay, in that week. Then, of course, student protests became stronger and more people got involved in them. And on October 18th, it was a really strong protest day. And so the protest was not just about the Metro Fair race, and it had to do more with bigger social issues concerning the life in Chile and the last 30 years that we've lived after dictatorship. So after the 18th of October, we've seen general protests in Santiago, but also in the many cities in Chile, and the bigger ones, of course, concentrate in the bigger cities of the country. If you want to learn, this is super, super brief summary. Of course, there are a lot, like I could be doing a class here about the reasons, the social reasons of why this happened and the historical reasons, but I wanted to recommend a podcast that a colleague here at CIE Santiago de Chile staff recommended, that it's called The Daily from the New York Times, that has a small sort of chapter on Chile and explains a little bit more about this history so that you can get a better idea of the social and political implications of the protest. And it's called Capitalism and Trial in Chile. What does it look like right now? We have continuing protests. They have become sort of less in terms of the number of people protesting, and we're having like some days stronger than others, but not as strong as what we saw on October and on November. What is coming next? In January and February, our summer vacation, it's the summer vacation period in Chile. So probably what we are seeing is that protests will go a little down in that period, since everyone usually, especially in February, goes out for vacations. In March, in Chile, is the start of the academic year and also the start of the work year in Chile. So probably protests won't be, well, we don't know, but protests won't be that strong, since March is always sort of a month where everyone's worried about how is school starting, how is work starting, etc. And then on April 2020, there will be supposedly a constitution referendum. So probably these political issues will rise up again in that month. That is sort of what we are seeing may be the scenario for the next 4 or 5 months. Okay.
Great.
Katie, can you?
Yep.
I forgot the name slide.
Yeah.
Go to the next slide.
Yeah.
In terms of course, these protests have impacted the daily life of every Chilean, but it has been different, okay? I'm gonna talk from a Santiago point of view. It has been different in every city. And also Santiago is a very big city. We have almost near to 8 million people living in the cities, and we have different districts as you saw in the map. So how it impacts your daily life has to do a lot with where do you live, where do you go to work, in what neighborhoods do you move around, okay? The protests have concentrated a lot on downtown Santiago. And that's why, for example, we cannot recommend living in downtown Santiago for next year, since we've seen that's been a problem in this month, okay? And I put it some points, like some general points of how it has changed the daily life. For example, the city's appearance, specifically in downtown Santiago or in other important sort of downtown areas in big districts like Puente Alto or Maipú. So the city is going to appear, it has a lot of more graffiti because of the protest, a lot of more sort of graphic protest. It is more dirty, it is more, I forgot the word, but it has affected the city's appearance, specifically in downtown Santiago. We have also more police presence in the streets, again, concentrated a lot in downtown Santiago. We have a lot of public transportation disruptions. So we definitely recommend to plan ahead. But this is something that for Santiago, at least, it's something that as a big city has always had, okay? Public transportation is a hazard. Big commutes are common in a city like Santiago. So it's sort of the mix between living in a big city and also having the specific context of the protest. And it may affect, we don't know yet, but it has affected, for example, in October, November, and December, some possible class cancellations and or less students in Duoc. That would be some general points. I would like to maybe that Matt shares a little bit about his specific experience with this.
Yep. So my experience, I'd say, is similar to other people's on the program in the sense that we live in the kind of El Centro, like right near Plaza Italia. There's a couple of us that have to deal with the protests there on a daily basis. I
want to clarify that Matt lives like right next to downtown, in downtown Santiago, and that's why he's very close to the protest.
Yeah, so I'd say my case is pretty unique in that sense. So obviously, like Camilla said, plan ahead with transportation. The metro is mostly, there's still some lines that you can't get to, like I think if you work in Maipú, for example, or actually I think they just opened Puente Alto, so just kind of depends on your campus, but all of your coordinators and mentors will be very understanding if you have issues with transportation. They know what's going on, so they're very helpful with that, and they understand that there's issues, like I said, with transportation. But day-to-day life, it kind of affects you depending on where you live. So for example, if you live in Providencia or Las Condes, you might not deal with it that often or almost never, even though there are protests there from time to time and throughout the rest of the city. But I don't think that I feel safe, I'd say, walking through the plaza, and I never feel in danger. Like Camilla said, there's a definite police presence, but if you just mind your own business and keep walking and are aware of your surroundings, then you'll be fine, I'd say.
As to add a little bit to what Matt said, maybe right now you do not have an idea, a good idea of how, like what are the districts in Santiago, so don't worry about that. But that's why, since some districts have been less affected, those are the ones we're recommending to leave when you come next year, because it's definitely different, the experience, okay? And I also wanted to add that what is CIE doing to make sure you're safe when arriving in Chile? Well, first thing, we're always recommending to stay away from protests. That is the first recommendation we give to participants, to our students and our teacher bar participants. We have done changes for safety issue, for example, in our recommended neighborhoods, as I was telling you, on where to live, and where we're going to do our orientation during February and March, and where is going to be your hostel location. we're also coordinated closely with DUOC and TLC. The other program is with the language company. And we are worried about having clear safety and security measures, that are coordinated from CIE with DUOC and TLC. And also to remind you that we have on-site 24-hour support when you're in the country. And yeah, I just wanted to comment, Katie, I don't remember if we had TLC participants or not today.
Right now, I don't think we do, but we will have some that I send the recording to. So they'll definitely be receiving it.
Okay, in the case of the TLC participants, they just work really in almost 1 or 2 districts of Santiago. In the case of the DUOC participants, they work on more diverse districts of Santiago, so they can be more affected and they probably have to plan more ahead public transportation. But the TLC participants usually work in districts where haven't been affected that much, so they're gonna go to their classes in the usual way. Okay. Planning ahead, what do I mean by planning ahead? I forgot to say that is to always have like more than 2 or 3 plans of how to get to your job and how to go back, so what different buses go there, what different lines of the metro, etc. Okay, if you can use a colectivo or Uber, etc. But that's what I mean with planning ahead, and we're gonna work on that specifically on transportation, on housing, on safety precautions, everything in depth during orientation.
Mm-hmm. And Camila, I remember you said that in the orientation last year, plan a 2 or 3 routes home. To us, that might seems like a very aggressive thing to do. Like, you get, you know how to get home and then you go the same way. But so this isn't particularly like just specific to the protest. This is just kind of normal.
As I was saying, some things are particularly affected by protests, but other things like Santiago being a very big city and having chaotic public transportation, it has always been like that. So I've always told participants from the start in orientation, okay guys, we have to have different plans, because even before protests, we always had a day where, I don't know, the metro line, something is not working because of whatever, at the last minute. So you had to, I have to get to DUOC, I have to take the bus then, or I have to take this other bus line because there was, with bus line number 5, whatever, something happened. Okay, that is usual in a big city like Santiago. So in my case, for example, as a Chilean and a Santiago person, I've always had a lot of plans in terms of public transportation.
And Matt, just to kind of give a little bit more insight, I know you're having people visit, and so what have you kind of told people back home? What would you tell someone, like if they're arriving tomorrow, can they still love the city? Can they still go about, most of their normal plans as long as they're paying attention, or how would things be different for them?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, that you can still go about your daily life in Santiago and it doesn't affect you. So it just kind of, like I think I previously mentioned, it depends where you are. If you're in Las Condes or Providencia, then you can definitely go about your daily life. And even if you, for example, I live in El Centro, but I still go about my daily life. I still go out with friends and get dinner with people, go to concerts. And yeah, like you said, just kind of be aware of where you are and make sure, I guess there's kind of now certain times that the protests usually happen. For example, Fridays, when people are getting off for work. So like Fridays around like 5 or 6 o'clock, there's almost always a massive protest in Plaza Italia. So that's, of course, something to be aware of if you're trying to get home or meet up with people, that's going on, and that definitely affects transportation and just ability to get around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Any questions from participants? Oh, one question was, And Camila, maybe you can answer this from Ryan, was just what happened, like if a class is canceled, are you still paid? Do you still get your monthly stipend? How has that worked for current teachers, and how will that work for future teachers?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ryan, right?
Yep.
In that case, you have to remember you are going to an internship at Duoc, and so you are going to have your monthly stipend, even though you have class cancellations or not. Okay, it's something that is sure.
Okay, great.
So
hopefully
because it's a commitment of Duoc to have you as an intern,
right?
The teacher intern.
Yeah, it's not like an hourly salary or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great. So I think that kind of wraps up what we had in mind to talk about the protest. Does anyone have any questions? I know, I've tried to update you, and Stephen sent an email as well, just making sure you guys all know what's going on. But again, if you have questions, always feel free to reach out to myself, Camila. We're happy to help answer questions from you or parents or friends, whatever you need to make sure you feel like you have the information that works for you. So just keep that in mind. So I don't see any questions, so we'll go to the questions page, although we might not have any questions. Ryan?
Well, I just want to add again what you were saying, Katie. If anyone wants to really talk, or like, I'm completely available to do so.
Yeah.
And maybe like in this presentation, we weren't able to go in depth with many things, but again, I want to assure you that we will do during orientation. And if you have specific questions or specific ways on how to get to your campus, or that you're thinking on where to specifically live, etc., I mean, we're here for you to help you out.
Yeah, of course. Awesome. So Lacey, Ryan, Grant, anything that we can help with today, or Lacey, you're all good?
I would say that it's important that, like what Matt commented on regarding budget and the prices you have already seen, so that you come with an idea of how much things cost in Chile. And if you have a specific plan, that you are going to be able to prepare for that plan, and be able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. So I guess that's it. Tiffany, unfortunately, she was trying throughout the entire presentation to join, but she couldn't do it. So she says hi. Again, I'm sure if you guys have questions that you want to ask her, she'd be happy to do that as well. So Matt, do you have any parting words?
Nope. Everything was pretty well covered. Yeah.
All right, sounds good. Well, if they have questions,
you so much,
is it okay?
Matt.
Matt, would you be okay if these participants have questions, if they reached out to you?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, awesome. Cool. All right, well, thank you guys all for joining. We'll have another webinar, just Camila and I talking about more logistics kind of in February, closer to departing. So we'll answer more questions then as well. But
orientation, the schedule of orientation, arrival, those sorts of things.
And I'll get you guys the information about the arrival date this week. So you'll have that, so you can start planning for that. And I'll check in with all of your visas soon. So I think that's it. Thank you all for coming. And I'll talk to you guys all soon.
Thank you, Katie.
Bye, Camila. Bye, Matt.
Bye.
Bye.